There are few things greater than watching a crisp, clean headshot in Valorant. Well, okay, I can name quite a few things, but that's not the point here. Nothing makes you more lovable in Valorant than when you're fragging out, winning clutches, and carrying your team to victory. Not all kills come equal in Valorant though. There are numerous playstyles you can implement to achieve those frags. One of the most unique playstyles we've seen is from none other than Nance, winner of VCT Masters Berlin in 2021. Now, Nance isn't the type of player that just runs in and frags. In fact, he's the exact opposite, most notably being called the biggest rat in all of Valorant. Now, let's break down this unique playstyle and see how you can implement it into your games and dominate the scoreboard. Before we get into it, this video is just a glimpse of what we can offer you. If you want a full detailed guide on how to improve in Valorant, you want to check out our website over at SkillCapped. But more on that at the end of the video. Nance is a lurker, meaning his playstyle is oriented around sneaking his way through gaps in the enemy's defense and flanking him. This is why he's known as a rat. Nance is constantly looking for areas he can exploit the enemy's positioning and get some free kills. Not only does this get him eliminations, but it also decreases the enemy team's map control, which in turn opens the door for Nance and his team to better push through choke points and take over a site. Now, how does one successfully lurk? You've probably had a few teammates that attempted to simply go to the opposite side as the rest of the team, hoping that the enemy will fall for an early bait and rotation, and this may work in the lower elos, but as you go up in the rankings, players are smarter than that to rotate off of a bit of noise. And even in lower ranks, players will learn that lesson quickly and hold their ground next time. And now you don't have a gap in the enemy's defense to lurk through. Nat's lurking playstyle is much more complex than that, but to tell you the truth, being able to lurk successfully is a big team effort. In order to lurk, your team needs to properly set you up to do so. Here's a clip of Nats lurking against G2. The round starts off with a quick mid-round engagement that then gets walled off. From there, Gambit makes a ton of map presence on the A side. Sova drone comes out, Reyna flashes are thrown, and Jet even pops her ultimate and starts doing Jet things, flying around and trying to rip people's heads off. Now, at this point, 4 players have been seen working around mid and A. One more thing to mention though is Nats pops off his wall over at the B side. With the presence of his teammates on A, along with this seemingly obvious B wall fake, G2 is sold that an A hit is likely. As a result, they lean all their players around A, which gives space for Nats to do his thing and gets the flank onto Sage. From there, B's nearly free for the taking, if he's able to successfully hold down the site while his teammates rotate. This lurk was successful only through perfect execution of map presence and ability usage to sell the fake A hit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that complicated in regular competitive games though. You can perform solo plays as well if you're able to spot out gaps in the enemy's defense and exploit them. Here's Nats trying to take the A site of Icebox. The enemies laid down a really good Viper's pit on site. Most would be foolish to charge straight into that pit. So, what does Nats do? He identifies a potential gap in the enemy's defense behind site, and he goes for it. He slowly goes through ropes, clearing angles for other potential players anchoring the site. No one ends up being on site, and Nat spots Sova entering Viper's pit. From there, he enters pit, awaits Viper, who's likely there as well, and once spotted, he pulls the trigger and gets an easy 2k and site control. Now, full disclaimer, this is a risky play to make. You have to weigh the risks over the rewards in Valorant. Much of being a lurker is just taking the right risks at the right time. The risks for this play weren't awfully high, considering the fact that most teams would just rely on the Viper's pit to cover the site while the rest of the team goes elsewhere. At most, there may have been one player backsite, which was the Sova, who just so happened to extend forward into the pit at the same time Nats pushed up. Whenever it's possible, look for a low-risk, high-reward play. Risk being the chances the enemy may be around when you lurk or flank, and reward being the amount of frags and map control you could gain for your team. If the odds are in your favor, you're in a good position to successfully lurk and flank the enemy team. Okay, moving on. One of the biggest ways Nance outplays his enemies is through the use of abilities. Nance is most notably known for his mastery of Viper. A neat play you can make with her is to pop her smoke, hide in it, and then pick it back up to deactivate it. When the smoke dissipates, you position yourself in an unexpected place to catch the enemy off guard and snag a quick frag. You can also pull off this play by just deactivating your smoke, but Nat's method of doing this is way cooler. Hiding in the smoke just adds that surprise factor to the play. Most players don't expect this when the smoke goes down. Their crosshair will probably be off, leading to a tough shot that they likely can't hit before Nats headshots him. And Nats brings way more to the table than just a few Viper tricks though. He's a team player, and as such, he knows how to pull off plays with the help of his teammates. In this clip, Nats gets ready for a hit, he gets the first frag, and Seekers gets used by Sky. Nats takes takes advantage of Skye's ultimate to peek A short. Then he waits for the Seekers to detect an enemy and immediately peeks for a frag afterwards. Seekers helped identify the enemy's position, but it also gave Nance coverage for a safe peek. Most players would turn towards the Seekers and try to shoot it down. At that exact moment, Nance goes in and snags an easy frag. Another example here. When possible, you want to call for a flash before your peeks. If you do so and the enemy gets hit by it, they'll be easy picking. Nance hides in his smoke again for an unsuspecting position. Along with that, he calls for a flash from his teammate as the smoke dissipates. This combination works out perfectly and grants Nance 3 kills in quick succession. The enemy didn't even know what was coming. Due to the time it takes to take out your weapon afterwards, flashes are a lot more effective when utilized with your team. And when possible, call out for a flash before you peek for way easier kills than just dry peeking. Okay. Now that we've gone through Nat's playstyle, we can't forget about his mechanics. An area that Nats really shines in is his ability to isolate duels. Nats never over peeks and will swing just enough so he can challenge one player. These small peeks also make it easier for Nats to aim, as he can simply pre-aim his crosshair onto the exact angle he's going for. And from there, it's a simple click and they're done for. In this clip, notice how Nats will constantly shuffle side to side, only peeking enough to clear a small angle that an enemy could be at. And after each peek, he goes a little wider to clear the next closest angle, which he finds Sage and gets that 1v1 duel he's looking for in this 1v3 situation. Nats continues to perform these small jiggle peeks to clear out stairs, then spawn, and then over towards market where he eventually meets a chamber. These small jiggle peeks save his life, as Jet was very close by. Because his peeks were so tight, Jet doesn't get a clear shot off Nats and misses. And due to this whiff, Nats gets the opportunity to transfer over and finish Jet off for the 1v3 clutch. Unless you're pushing hard onto a side, taking these short peeks should be the main way you challenge an angle, particularly when you're at a man disadvantage and are trying to isolate duels. Short peeking will make sure you don't end up facing multiple players at once. While he may be fragging several players instantly during his lurks, Nats takes particular caution when taking head-on duels. Now, this ensures he only goes up against one player at a time during his duels. And last but certainly not least, a quality that Nats really shines in is his ability to outposition his enemies. When getting swarmed by multiple enemies this way, Nats does an incredible job of constantly repositioning when he peeks out, and this is to ensure the enemies aren't able to preemptively place their crosshair at a certain angle that Nats was previously peeking at. And by constantly changing his angle, the enemies are forced to flick over to that angle and therefore have a more difficult time of landing a shot. Meanwhile, when Nats peeks, he has a good idea of what positions he plans to challenge. He starts off peeking elbow to challenge the satcheled raise. From there, he hides behind the billboard, waiting for the first player to enter sight. Notice how the Jet is looking over at elbow, since that's where Nats was last seen. Surprise, that's not where he is. The reposition grants him a free kill. And from there, Nance alternates between peeking the right and left sides of the board and finds another isolated kill onto Cypher. And after that, Nats changes position again to the left corner of sight and catches Sage off guard. Even though the enemy pushed as a team, Nats managed to isolate duels and keep the enemies guessing with his angle changes. And really, this made all the difference. Had Nats peeked the same angle 4 times, it likely wouldn't have gone so smoothly, as the enemy could have just pre-aimed at that angle. In this clip, Nats is taking on Sova at switch. He alternates his peeks between going at ground level and spawn and up above on ropes. And because of this, the enemy has to guess where Nats is peeking and hopes his crosshair just ends up in the right spot. Meanwhile, Nats knows exactly where Sova is, which leads to a duel that actually favors him, versus before where it'd be fairly even if he peeked the same spot over and over. With the positioning capabilities with the rope, the final player with the operator ends up in a tricky position where they can't tell if Nats will peek from above or below. Meanwhile, this player ends up peeking the exact same angle they've been peeking on since this 1v5 clutch happened. Surprise, surprise, Nats anticipated this and pre-aims onto the spot, resulting in a quick headshot. Being predictable is going to put you at a big disadvantage when you're taking your fights. When you have the space to do it, try to reposition yourself after each peek. This is going to make you harder to read, and if the enemies are predictable themselves, it's going to give you a massive advantage in fights. You can also outwit the enemy during a 1v1 duel by repositioning as well. Anyway, that is all we have for today's video. We hope you learned some new ratty tricks and techniques that'll take your aim and gameplay to the next level. And like we mentioned earlier, Nats has a pretty unique playstyle. You likely won't be used to playing this way before, so make sure to give it some time to fully implement his style into your play. And as always, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.